let's go ahead and begin. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well enough. Thank you very much. I hope you are.
Yes. Things are going well enough over here. We finished our unwilling renovation of the bathroom, which we did not want to do, but we were sort of forced to do. And it looks pretty awful because we just replaced the floor tile we needed to replace and it doesn't match at all. And it's just sort of a nightmare. But, you know, that's what's going on. And then we're dealing with sports and theater, you know, my son's sports and my daughter's theater, as always. Looking forward to, there's all sorts of stuff for us to watch together coming up because, like, as always, we're watching Holiday Baking Championship, which we always watch this time of year, but we're all four big fans of Stranger Things, so we've got new Stranger Things coming out very shortly, and we were all four fans of Wicked, so we've got a new Wicked movie coming out, and we were all four fans of both Knives Out movies, and we've got a new Knives Out movie coming up, so we're going to keep pretty busy here.
Yeah, we're way behind on Stranger Things. I don't know. It never grabbed me the way that it seems to have grabbed the American public. But it's I'll probably catch up on it one of these years.
It's a great show. You should get caught up on it.
I've watched it.
Okay, I'm familiar with its work.
Exactly. Yeah, so we're getting ready for Thanksgiving here. Mom and Dad are coming to visit us, and Alexa, my daughter, is flying down from college, so we're going to get to see her, and the grandparents are going to get to see her, and it's going to be nice. And then that same weekend, we're planning on driving up to Virginia, where we do our annual Choose and Cut Christmas tree expedition. So we are looking forward to that as well. And then just the sort of hectic to-do list coming up of everything that needs to happen that always ends up filling up during the holidays. And then reading a ton of comics.
Yes. So our lives have become hell on earth. No, they have not. We are still having a lot of fun reading Marvel comics. It's fun to read Marvel comics. But this whole podcast has changed because Marvel has basically shot up from 10 books a month to 15 books a month. And with at least one of those books every month from this point on being double-sized or triple-sized. So we're going to have to see what we can do in terms of covering a month at a time and how many episodes that's going to take us, especially because we're going to have a guest for some of the books from this month, and there is a jumbo book this month. So we are covering the month of July 1968, a pretty great month for Marvel Comics. We're going to be covering a lot of good books, but there will be some stinkers in there as well. But so let's go ahead. Should we jump in with the first book we're covering?
Yes, Amazing Spider-Man number 62. The name of the dame is Medusa. First off, I want to say I really like this cover.
Yeah, I do too.
I like the fact that they're actually coloring her hair as something that's closer to the actual color of red hair.
Yes.
And it looks great. It looks fantastic rather than the usual, scarlet full-on red that we usually get and that we get on the inside. Yeah, she is tying up a prone Spider-Man with her hair as she stands triumphantly above him with her tresses all flailing about willy-nilly.
So we should explain that for some reason they've decided that one of their biggest assets that they've been sitting on is Medusa. So they have decided to go ahead and devote 2 books to Medusa this month. And we are going to knock both of them out in this episode. So first we have the Spider-Man is basically turned into a big backdoor pilot for Medusa getting her own comic, which unfortunately is something that's going to plague Spider-Man over the years. So they're like, oh, Spider-Man's our best-selling book, so let's go ahead and use it as a place to do backdoor pilots. And then that's not enough. They're going to go ahead and use Marvel Superheroes, which is their book that they use as a showcase for new heroes. And they're going to devote a whole issue of that to Medusa. She's going to be the named hero this month. So it's very strange that they've suddenly decided she is a great asset. I do not think she's a great asset. I think prehensile hair is a very silly thing that is never going to work very well in a comic, especially because the length of the hair just varies wildly. Sometimes it's closer to 10 feet long. Sometimes it's closer to 40 feet long, like when she has to reach out and grab a car. It's
or the Eiffel Tower. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. So anyway, go ahead and launch us into this issue, Sue.
All right. So make way for ... Medusa, in which Spidey battles the most fabulous superpowered glamazon in the history of comicdom. Another Titanic Triumph by Smilin' Stan Lee and Jazzy John Romita, delineated by dashing Don Heck, inking Mickey DeMeo, lettering Swingin' Sammy Rosen. So we start out, Spider-Man is just had his webbing clipped as he's above the city, and he starts falling. Turns out that it was clipped because Medusa was flying around in this weird flying delta wing looking thing that she's got, which looks cool, but just jumps out as unnecessarily unsafe.
Yes. Just go ahead and put a 4 in that thing. Why is there no 4 in this thing?
Yes, so it looks like a big sort of boomerang shaped thing, and she's standing on the two legs of the boomerang, but then there's a triangular bit out the back that connects the two ends of the boomerang shape. And she's got a big handlebar thing that she is resting on as she's flying this thing. So anyway, she is getting all up in Spider-Man's business for getting his web snapped by her and essentially like, get out of my way. So this is, as you often like to talk about, the inconsequential confrontation at the beginning of this issue. They have met, they have had some conflict, and then they head off their separate ways. It seems that the chief executive of a hairspray company is seeing this outside of his window and decides that Medusa he must have her. He must have her to endorse his hairspray. So he sends his assistant down to the street to try and find her where she lands. She lands in the middle of New York City. People are running away in fear, including a little child who seems to be running out. They say in the text is like into traffic or that she'll get trampled or something like that, but it's really unclear that he's in real danger here. But one way or the other, she rescues him from whatever danger there is with her hair and returns him to a cop. And I do have to say, I really like the look of that first panel on page 5, where Medusa is landing on her so-called mono cruiser. I like the way that John Romita handles the prehensile hair. Mm-hmm. He does a very good job with it.
Oh, yeah. I like it maybe more than Kirby, who invented this particular brand of prehensile hair.
Yes. So she is then standing heroically among the people who are there, and people seem very impressed by her, and they seem to be accepting her as a heroic figure as well as a sexy figure. There is an exchange where one guy just says, "She makes Raquel Welch look like a boy." Which is just a weird way of putting things. Like, it's not really how things work. I don't know. Unless maybe, you know what? Stan Lee was seeing that gender exists on a spectrum and that this sort of shifts the Overton window of the spectrum. Maybe I'm mixing things up terribly here, but anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's a standard compliment of the time. Makes Raquel Welch look like a boy, you know, like she's got so much va-va-voom that you take the person who is most famous for having the most va-va-voom and, you know, by comparison, that person would have no va-va-voom.
I guess so. It's just, yeah, sure, fine. One way or the other, the assistant to the hairspray executive, and can we point out just how weird it is in our modern era of mega corporations that you would have a company that was a hairspray company? Like,
yes,
that's all it would do. That just seems like such a strange concept these days.
Instead of that being like something that Pepsi Cola does in one of its 5,000, spinoffs.
Right, exactly. Anyway, he offers her a job, and she, unlikely enough, decides to take the job, thinking that this will allow her to study humanity. Because the reason she's here is she's trying to figure out if the Inhumans can come out of hiding, if humanity is ready to accept them for who they are. And so she figures, oh, well, if I take a job, how better to observe humans up close. Peter Parker is going by Gwen's house, knowing that she thinks that he's a heel, but it seems that he's just trying to apologize and make amends and see if he can do anything about this destroyed relationship right now.
Because he published photos of her dad engaging in shady police work.
Well, and then also there was the appearance that Pete attacked her dad as well.
Yes.
which he was really defending himself from the dad who had been brainwashed, but, that's not what it looked like. So we get a side bit in J. Jonah Jameson's Gentleman's Club, and Gentleman's Club in the literal sense, not in the
yes,
not in the euphemistic sense that we usually think of it these days. Talking to Norman Osborn, and Norman Osborn is really snappy and is clearly going through it with this whole visions of the Green Goblin and Spider-Man and the fire, and why can't I remember what happened that night, and why am I so bothered by stuff about the Green Goblin that's been coming up in the news lately. So we see that he is still going through that, so we're keeping up this little subplot of, is the Green Goblin going to come back one of these days? Mm-hmm. So Medusa is doing her photo shoots with the hairspray company and ends up lashing out about this. This is not something that she really is really down for, even though she agreed to it. And the executive is just fine with her wrecking the place, but not fine with her walking out on him. So he just happens to see Spider-Man swinging by at that moment and opens the window and he's like, help, help, help us, somebody, hurry. And gets Spider-Man to come in and tells him, oh, Medusa just ran wild and you need to go get her because she is wreaking havoc on the city. So Medusa, meanwhile, as she's flying away, is thinking to herself about humanity. Their intelligence leaves much to be desired. Like, yeah, I agree with you. So anyway, Spider-Man and Medusa are fighting. The hairspray executive is having a film crew on a nearby rooftop filming this whole thing, and he's hoping he's going to be able to use this in part of his ads. By the way, hairspray is supposed to keep your hair all tame and in place.
Yes.
And, not flying all about grabbing things. This whole thing makes no sense.
Yeah, I can understand if this was some sort of like volumizing shampoo or something, and it's like, look at how full and rich your hair could be. But like hairspray, where it's like, keep your hair nailed down flat, why would you want to have someone with the opposite of that hair? It is an excellent question.
Yes. So Spider-Man and Medusa fight for several pages. There is a panel where Spider-Man says, look, I've never fought a female before. And I'm like, do you not remember Princess Python?
Yes,
come on.
True.
Yes, indeed. But I guess that's probably the only female character that he's ever fought, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. I guess so. And at one point, Spider-Man is thinking to himself during the fight, that's the trouble with women. They just can't keep their mouths shut. It's like, oh, and you're wondering why Gwen doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So anyway, they eventually both figure out that they have been duped into fighting each other and head off their separate ways. The hairspray executive then finds out that their ad campaign has backfired. Surprise, surprise. And so he's now being fired as president, and the assistant is now the new president of the company. And at the end, we see that Peter Parker, even though he's won, he didn't even really win with this, but one way or the other, he's gone back to being all mopey about where he is with Gwen. MJ happens to run into him and is being her regular bubbly self, and he just mopes off into the distance with a big Spider-Man shadow being cast from him. And next, the Vulture flies again.
Yes.
So, Matt, you've already given some of your thoughts about this, about the backdoor pilot. I know personally this felt like very much like a silly issue that I would not feel like I needed to read again. What are your thoughts on this?
I enjoyed it. It's a very silly issue, but I find it silly in a sort of enjoyable way. I'm just going through my notes. First of all, I'm getting really tired of Heck. He's been on the book for, it seems like, 10 issues or so now. I'm looking forward to him leaving, which I think he will soon. And he won't be on Spectacular Spider-Man this month, which we're about to cover. It is really funny that they're giving Medusa such a big push this month and never again. Like, she'll never have her own book again. She'll never be a big guest star again. It's like, they're like, hey, this might be a valuable character. And then they're like, no, she's not. And then they just never give her a big push again. And indeed she has prehensile hair. Did I mention she has prehensile hair? That's her power. I had said that Norman Osborn didn't transform into the Green Goblin again until issue 96, and so I was wondering why they were giving him such a big push. I had forgotten that there's a book I've never read, which is Spectacular Spider-Man #2, where he becomes a Green Goblin again. So they're building up to that. So I've never read that book, but it because I missed it in my Spidey read through, because it's sort of a, well, we'll get into why later. But so that's coming up. At the end, I really wished that, once Spider-Man and Medusa realized they'd been tricked by Montgomery G. Where did I write down the name? When Spider-Man
Montgomery G. Bliss.
When Spider-Man and Medusa realized they'd been tricked by Montgomery G. Bliss into fighting each other in order to sell his hairspray, I wish they could have gone and confronted them. I think that would have been a really fun scene. Instead, Spider-Man just tells the press that Medusa is wild, and that's enough to bring down Montgomery G. Bliss, which is just entirely true. Like, this is not Spider-Man telling the press anything that's not true in order to bring this guy down. He's not really putting much effort into bringing this guy down. But I like this story. I think it's a silly, silly story about a hairspray executive tricking Spider-Man into getting into a big fight with an Inhuman. And then, which I guess is not that different from what's going on in Submariner right now, where we have a plant-faced villain tricking Submariner into getting into a fight with an Inhuman. But that's the name of the game in Marvel Comics here in July 1968. Getting tricked into fighting Inhumans. But I like this issue. It's a lot of fun.
One thing when you were talking at the name of the executive, I kept on thinking of Montgomery G. Burns.
Yes.
The whole time.
Yes, another evil executive with a sort of simpering assistant.
Yes. I'm assuming that was completely a coincidence, that wasn't some kind of weird reference to this obscure issue of Spider-Man.
That would be strange.
That would be very strange. Granted, strange things have happened on The Simpsons before.
Yes.
All right. So I think I'm done with this. I will go ahead and let you talk about the oddly longer than usual Marvel superheroes story starring the Inhuman named Medusa.
Yes. So I should point out that I recently found out in trivia that the two most famous authors from Portland, Oregon, both like to name characters after streets in Portland, Oregon, which is why two different of their characters have the same last name. That is why Ramona Quimby has the same last name as Chief Quimby on The Simpsons. It's because they were both named after Quimby Street in Portland, Oregon.
Interesting.
But, okay, so let's go ahead and let's see, let me pull it up here. So we've been reading Marvel superheroes because it at first was just a reprint book, reprinting Golden Age and early Silver Age books. But then they started running a new superhero feature in it called Captain Marvel, which ran for 3 issues. Then they went ahead and spun Captain Marvel off into his own book. And it's like, well, are we just going to go back to doing reprints? They're like, nope, let's go ahead and create a new hero who might spin off into their own book. Medusa, the most uncanny Inhuman of all, an all-new book-length action epic. Well, it's not actually a book-length.
And you forgot the one issue of that was Spider-Man.
Yes, that's right. They did a one-off Spider-Man tale with Ross Andrew illustrating it. I forgot we'd done that. Yes. So now here we have Medusa. And it says, the magnificent Medusa, let the silence shatter. And on hand to help our hair-flinging heroine through her first solo appearance are these little old star makers: Stan Lee, editor; Archie Goodwin, writer — that's interesting; Gene Colan, artist; plus Vince Galletta, inker; and Irving Watanabe, letterer. I think this may be the first we've seen of Irving Watanabe. He'll go on to become a big Marvel letterer.
Yeah, I believe so.
We've talked before about how Vince Galletta and Gene Colan used to be Marvel's worst pair back when they were doing Submariner together. And they've been getting better. And indeed, they are better in this issue than they were back in the Submariner days. They're still not great. I would still say that Galletta is Colan's weakest inker, but really not that bad. So we begin the issue. Black Bolt is driving himself nuts trying to create a device that will enable him to speak at a normal volume again. He needs some sort of power source. He can't find it. Medusa decides to leave to once again go off into the world. It's a little bit unclear. She says, though in the past I've found the world to contain deceit and treachery, fantastic genius and scientific achievement also abound there. And it says, such as befalls our Titan Trust Miss in Spider-Man number 62, now on sale, subtly sales pitch and stand. So I guess this is supposed to happen after that issue. Even though her personality is quite different in this issue than it was in that issue. She's a much more even-keeled person in this issue than she was in that, even though they came out the same month, and one acknowledges the other. So we cut to Medusa's old friends. So let's talk about all the different changes Medusa has had in her personality. Do you remember Medusa's original personality back when she was a member of the Frightful Four? Because she was pretty wicked. She was a pretty genuinely wicked person. She was not someone who was acting like, I am the peaceful princess of a peaceful people who has been suckered into doing this. Now, they later explained that she had amnesia and that she had become sort of a wild person under the result of amnesia, and that's how she had been seduced into evil with the Frightful Four. And then when her amnesia seemingly recovered, when she was recaptured by the Inhumans, that then she became a good, peace-loving Inhuman again. Well, now we're going to go ahead and bring that into sharp relief, the differences between old and new Medusa, because she is going to rejoin the Frightful Four here. So we've got the Wizard, the Trapster, a.k.a. Pastepot Pete, and the Sandman. Colin does a very sandy Sandman. He's always covered in grit. And the Frightful Four, which is now the Frightful Three, because I've never replaced her. I'd forgotten how long it takes them to replace her, because when I was reading comics as a kid, there were always 4 people in the Frightful Four, and it was always a rotating person in Medusa's old spot. But I'd forgotten they actually haven't rotated yet. It's still just the Frightful Three.
So you were talking a moment ago about how Sandman appears. Is it just me, or when he first got his high-tech uniform that he got recently in the Fantastic Four, didn't it have pants?
Yes.
Or am I? Yes. And for some reason, he has no pants in this one. He's wearing shorty shorts.
Maybe that's why he's so testy.
Yes. Let's go with that.
Yes. So then Medusa decides to make her way back. She is in Paris for some reason, and she was going to go try to find, I thought she was going to go try to find Reed Richards to get a little power source from him, but how did she make it to Paris?
It says, rumor has it that Claw, the so-called master of sound, was seen here in Paris. Now, why she's searching for Claw, I don't know. Was she thinking that he was going to have a power source?
This is very strange. I do not know. But somehow the Wizard knows where she is. And the Wizard talks about his id ray again and using his id ray on her to turn her evil again. But his id ray doesn't have any power either, so he needs to power that up. So they've got something in common here. They both need power sources for their super rays. And somehow they all meet up again, and they convince Medusa to rejoin them and say that, look, you need a power source for your super ray. We need a power source for our super ray. Well, they don't even say that. They go like, look, you need a power source for your super ray. We want to help you. Let's all team up together. But first, we have to engage in a heist. So then she says, okay, I'll join you guys in this heist. Then the issue becomes a lot of fun. It becomes a very fun heist tale as we have everybody using their powers in different ways. The Wizard, the Trapster, Sandman, and Medusa all have to use their own powers in separate ways in order to break in to this government building where they have the material we seek is known as Quadranium 99. The base where it's held is a virtual fortress. They're prepared for anything, that is, but the combined force of the Frightful Four. And Medusa has to sort of shimmy down an elevator axle using her hair and then take out various security devices as she goes. And then she has to sort of open up a big vault. It's all very cool. I think it's all a lot of fun. Archie Goodwin, obviously most famous for writing the Secret Agent X9 comic strip for 15 years or so. And you can see how he brings some of those skills to bear here. So then Medusa eventually figures out, you don't want this device to power my fancy sci-fi super ray. You want it to power your own fancy sci-fi super ray. And the first thing you're going to do with that fancy sci-fi super ray is change my id and magnify my id to make me a bad gal again, which I don't want to do that. So then she gets in a massive fight with them, ends up gluing their ship together and sending them flying off into outer space. But now she is falling. Luckily, of all the places in the world she could be falling, she is falling directly onto the Eiffel Tower. Well, it would be bad if she was falling directly onto the Eiffel Tower, because then she would get skewered by the Eiffel Tower. But she's falling just past the Eiffel Tower and can reach out with her hair and grab onto the Eiffel Tower and swing herself around, flinging herself all around the Eiffel Tower as her hair grabs onto it. And then who should come but Black Bolt, who has found her and comes and grabs her and flies away with her. And that is the end of the issue. So, Steve, this is an absolutely crazy issue. We thought last issue with Medusa was pretty crazy. This one is even crazier. What did you think of it?
Since we went back and were talking about why she was in Paris, I'm once again just like, did I miss something about why Claw was... that's all I can think about now. Is, what does Claw have to do with anything, and why name drop him? That just makes no sense to me. I'm wondering why because this story was 26 pages. Usually these Marvel stories these days are 20 or so. But I think 26. I know it was
25.
More than 20. 25. Okay, thank you. I guess it was counting the cover in there. Why do we need an extra 5 pages to tell this story? It doesn't seem to make much sense. You know,
well, the heist doesn't even start until page 15, so that's why. They probably could have gotten to the heist quicker.
Yes, I believe they could have. Overall, I think that they would have been better off just sort of forgetting that she had been evil at one point rather than trying to go back and revisit this. You know, I love a good heist film, but somehow something about this heist just didn't grab me. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this issue.
Yeah, I liked it. I like heist movies. I liked this heist issue. I think it's fun watching her figure out how to break into safes with her hair and doing all kinds of stuff like that. Let me check out my notes. Yeah, I really like the cover of her hair whipping around like crazy. We talked about how Kirby originally used to draw her hair. He created the character. We talked about how Romita was doing the hair. Now Colin is doing it entirely differently from how Romita did it. But I really like how he's doing it with her hair sort of, you know, almost whipping around like a whirlpool sort of thing, or like it's floating on water. I really like how it looks. I
think I've mentioned to you, I've mentioned several times that for reasons that defy any sort of explanation, I watched the entire Inhumans TV show.
Yes.
And one of the things in there is they shave Medusa bald at the end of the second episode.
Yeah.
And
what is the point? I guess because the special effects were too expensive.
That's exactly what it was, yes. And they realized that they had a stinker on hand and wanted to cut the budget as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Yes.
Other notes I had, like definitely when she's rescuing a man in the street who is about to get hit by their car, her hair must be at least 50 feet long there. The hair can really get quite long.
When she's grabbing the Eiffel Tower, I mean, it's dozens of feet long.
Yes. Certainly is. I find that Coletta is stretched thin this week. You know, they're doing 15 books and Coletta is inking way too many of them. And his inking is not as good as it has been in Thor in recent months. It's okay here, and certainly much, much better than it used to be, but still not great. Her costume here is absolutely nothing like the costume she has the same month in Spider-Man. And indeed, nothing like the costume she has in Fantastic Four when she's over there. 3 wildly different costumes, a sort of object lesson in how different costumes can be, which is fine. I guess if she's just like a normal person who would have different outfits that she wears on different days of the week, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not how comic books are supposed to work.
Except for Janet Van Dyne, you know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
She says at one point, the Frightful Four are a threat no more because they've been glued together in a ship. I'm like, really? Really? They're a threat no more? I don't know about that. I end by saying shockingly fun issue showcases how inconsistent her character has been, though. She was pretty thoroughly bad in Frightful Four issues. Now she's entirely good. Coletta art not bad. Colin has fun with her hair in a different way than Romita did. Ultimately, character is a dud and does not deserve her own book, and they'll never try again. And that was the end of my notes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Let's move on to Daredevil number 42.
This is, I think we both talked before about how sometimes you go back to look at the issues that you're going to be talking about today, and you're like, did I actually read this one?
Yeah.
This issue of Daredevil is did I actually read this one issue for this month? I went back and looked at it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I definitely did read it. But
the art is so memorable.
Well, okay, we'll talk about that. So nobody laughs at the Jester, the newest, the most cataclysmic creation of Smilin' Stan Lee and Genial Gene Colan, embellished by Dan Adkins, lettered by Sam Rosen. Now, have we gotten Adkins inking Colan before? I'm trying
Certainly
to remember.
Not. I would have remembered this. This is really startling art, and I would have remembered Adkins inking Colan. I will just go ahead and jump in and say I love the art in this issue. I love Adkins on Colan. I didn't think I would, and I do.
Yeah, it's such a bizarre combination, but you put them together and page 4, panel 1, look at Foggy and his girlfriend on the right side of the panel.
Yeah.
And is there a particular Bronze Age artist that art is reminding you of?
Huh.
Look particularly at her face there.
Simonson?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was thinking. It feels bizarrely you put Colin and Adkins together, and you seem to some degree, get something that is Simonson flavored,
Yeah.
which I
Walt
love.
Simonson, who will later become the artist on Thor and will have a very distinctive style and will occasionally write letters to Marvel Comics in the 70s that we'll get to read.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. The combo does look kind of like Walt Simonson.
Yes. So anyway, we get the Jester. He is a villain who seems to use things like yo-yos and various silly toys to commit his crimes. He's always spinning a yo-yo around on his finger and knocking people in the head with it. Which doesn't seem very Jester-ish to me, but, sure, fine, we'll go with it. So Matt and Karen and Foggy and what is Foggy's girlfriend's name again?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's not that important. But they're all sort of hanging around and everyone's just thinking that Matt is very cold-blooded, that he doesn't seem to care that his brother is dead. It's like, that's because he's not dead, people. But, what you going to do? We then get to see the Jester's lair. This is on page 6. This is very much a DC Comics villain.
Yeah.
And a DC Comics villain lair. It's fun, but it just seems very incongruous and out of place for...
Yeah, like the Toy Man or the Prankster or one of those. Yeah. He
right,
does seem
exactly.
Like
yeah. So anyway, he goes and looks through his scrapbook to go and reminisce about his career. Apparently, he was an actor who wanted very much to be taken seriously as an actor, but he was booed off the stage as Cyrano de Bergerac and fired after just one night, it seems. Then he tried to train himself in stage combat and, acrobatics and stuff like that, so that when he got his chance again, he would be ready to go. But it seems that his career kept on going nowhere, and he eventually ended up as the punchline in what looks like a vaudeville type act. He would get hit in the face with a pie every night, and after a while he just couldn't take it anymore, and he snaps and decides to embark upon a life of crime with his stage combat experience that he's got. And for some reason, dress up all silly as a jester. We then get a little aside to the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine, which we will be talking about in an upcoming episode.
This is so strange. We probably should have talked about these in a different order because we're about to spoil the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine, which this issue totally does, seemingly assuming that, nobody's going to be reading this Daredevil who has not already read the Spectacular Spider-Man magazine, so it's okay for us to go ahead and spoil it. But it was my impression that they were really being sold to different audiences. They were trying to reach out to a new audience with the Spectacular Spider-Man black and white magazine, and it would have been somewhat unusual for anyone to be reading this Daredevil who had already, who was going to read that one at all, much less had already read it. So to spoil that issue here and to have the villain in this issue be the villain from that issue and then reveal that he's dead at the end, even though he dies in a completely different way than he dies in that Spectacular Spider-Man issue. Very strange.
Yeah, I don't think it's really much of a spoiler that he's a villain in the Spider-Man issue. I mean, it's pretty clear right from the get-go that he's going to be the antagonist, but...
but it spoils the fact that he dies.
Sure, why not? So anyway, this is Richard Raleigh, who is running for mayor in New York City under some kind of new third party. And they make it clear here that he is corrupt and that he does not want a non-corruptible DA, so he's trying to disrupt Foggy Nelson's campaign. And so he then ends up deciding to flush out the Jester, whom he's going to use to his own ends. And he does this by making a speech on TV saying that he's going to get the Jester behind bars because law and order, yada, yada, yada. the jester is like, you're gonna call me out, huh? I'll go get you. And crawls in Raleigh's window just in time to have Raleigh already pointing a gun at him. And then just saying, yeah, actually, I wanted you to come here so I could offer you $10,000 or something like that in order to get Foggy Nelson out of the race.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, the same foursome from earlier are out having a day in the park, it looks like, and the jester tracks them down and attacks. He's just like, oh, it's Nelson and two girls and a blind dude. So, no problem there. He ends up taking Matt Murdock hostage, as it were, and he, of course, has to play along, although he's saying, Daredevil's going to rescue me. They're like, Daredevil, he's dead. He's like, no, he's dead, but there's another Daredevil that you're going to have to watch out for. He trained somebody.
Yes, he trained his replacement.
Yes, he trained his replacement, and it's clear that Foggy and Karen don't know what to make of this claim. But one way or the other, Matt Murdock is then thrown into a back room by the jester to be held hostage as insurance against Foggy Nelson continuing his campaign. But then Matt changes into his Daredevil costume, which he apparently was keeping in an inner pocket in his coat, and then uses acid to destroy his own clothes.
Yes, which completely unnecessary. Like, he could have just stuffed them underneath something. To the idea that he carries enough acid on him at all times to dissolve an entire suit of clothes. Can you imagine how much acid that would take?
Well, this is the 60s.
What? Oh, like that kind of acid? Yeah. Just take enough acid to dose everybody there and have them hallucinate that whatever you want.
I mean, just don't even bother with it at all. Just,
yes.
You were wearing your Daredevil clothes underneath there, you change into your Daredevil costume, and then you just don't think about the clothes anymore. Like,
yes.
That's how this always works in these books. One way or the other, they get into a big fight for several pages. It's a fun fight. Eventually, Daredevil is knocked for a loop a little bit, but he's not unconscious like he pretends to be, playing possum a little bit so that he can then follow the jester and see where he goes. As you say, the jester finds Raleigh dead, and Daredevil is trying to capture the jester, but the jester ends up throwing marbles under his feet, and so then the jester is able to escape as Daredevil falls down. So, yeah it's the art in this issue, as we've both said, surprisingly delightful art.
Yes.
The story and the character, less so.
Yeah, I kind of like him. Maybe it's just the art winning me over, but I like the idea of a bad guy dressed as Jester. It's a striking, iconic outfit. The yo-yo, attacking people with his yo-yo is pretty silly, and I never get over that. I never make my peace with the fact he's attacking people with yo-yo and with marbles and with everything else, that all these other toys that he can use. I never make my peace with that, but it's fine. So let's see. They review again that it's like, oh, we're all sure that Daredevil is dead, even though we only found one tiny piece of his costume, and that therefore Mike Murdock is dead too. Still, nobody mentions what happened to the Exterminator or the Animen, whether they were blown up in that explosion or whether they got away or whether they got arrested or what could have possibly happened to them. I love how the Jester has a huge mural of his own face on the wall as he's jumping around the toy room talking to himself. Yeah, the way that Raleigh is found dead is utterly impossible given what happens in Spectacular Spider-Man. But I just really love this issue. I love even like the first time we see the Jester on page 1. There's something like EC or something like, I'm trying to think what EC artist this sort of reminds me of, but it's because obviously Dan Atkins trained under Wally Wood. Colin did just a little bit of work for EC. Wally Wood did a lot of work for EC. But they're so different. Like, Colin is so loose and fluid and loosey-goosey penciler, and Atkins is such a solid, hard, strict spotter of inker, and you just wouldn't think they'd work together. But Atkins sort of has Colin on lockdown here in a way that I find very appealing.
Yeah, surprisingly great art in this issue.
Yes.
All right. So, why don't you tell us about Thor, Matt?
All right. Okay, let's go ahead and do Thor number 154. we have sort of a cover that showcases all the various things going on in this book as Thor is running towards us. And then we have in just single color green surrounding him, various things that will happen in this book that we are about to cover. And it is an effective cover that showcases how busy things have gotten. And there's no text on the cover, which is sort of striking for Marvel Comics covers at the time. We get inside the book and it says, the mighty Thor to wake the Mangog. I assume that's pronounced Mangog. I don't know any other way to pronounce it.
I do not see another way to pronounce it either.
Mangog, something like that. I don't know. We'll say Mangog.
It's Italian. It's Mangog.
Mangog. Produced by Smile and Stanley and Jelly Jack Kirby, Vince Colletta, inker, Artie Simak, letterer. Got a bit too much hatching on this first page, as is almost always the case. Thor is standing here looking up to the heavens, saying, Omnipotent Odin hath stayed my hand, whilst I did battle with the merciless Loki. But why? What dire calamity hath made the all-highest thus spare the Prince of Evil? And indeed, we see Loki getting away. Thor's like, oh, well, Loki's gotten away. I'm going to go ahead and visit Sif in the hospital. Then who should show up but Hela? He's like, are you here for Sif or me? Because there was a time when I was supposed to die several issues ago, and you then just turned your head, and I'm like, okay, I'll take my buddy back as long as she's turned her head. And he's like, so I guess it would kind of make sense if you're back for me. And she's like, no, I'm not back for you. You know, you got away with that clean. And he's like, are you here for Sif? She's in the hospital. And Hela's like, no, I'm not really here for Sif either. I'm just here to tell you, like, I think you would enjoy going to Valhalla. Here are some of the warriors in Valhalla. I'm just going to try to tempt you into this. And Thor is like, no, I say thee nay. I don't want to die. I don't want Sif to die. I want you to go ahead and go away. Though I be sorely tempted, to thee I say, be gone. And he sends her away. And she does leave. So the first of many, many stories we have crammed into this issue. We then cut back to Ulick, who was falling into a bottomless pit at one point and then found a little cracky cave on the side of the bottomless pit that he was able to pull himself into. And then he finds within it, not the first time in this book, we've seen a big sort of tomb with a message from Odin on it saying, let no living being disturb what lies within by order of Imperial Odin. Well, of course, Ulick's having none of that. He's like, oh, I want to see what's in here. So he bursts open the door and he finds inside Mangog. So Mangog, I think there are times when I wish I was reading the old Marvel Essentials collections, because I think Mangog would look great in black and white. I think Mangog has a great look to him on the page, but then the colorist, the unnamed colorist, has colored his arms and legs bright yellow. And I never like bright yellow as a, it's okay having a little bit of yellow on Superman's costume or whatever, or on Thor's costume for that matter, but having someone whose arms and legs are all bright yellow and then these bizarre three-fingered, three-toed hands and feet, I guess, I don't know. I guess I'm talking myself out of liking this design so much. What do you think of Mangog, Steve?
I think it's just imaginative as hell. It's, so it's, humanoid, but as Matt was saying, both the hands and the feet are, have two fingers and then a thumb on the hands, and on the feet, a toe coming out the back. And so humanoid from the, wrists and ankles up until you get to the head. And the head is this huge thing where the chin comes all the way down to the belt line. And then he's got sort of looks like a stone goatee sticking out from that. Big old rocky teeth, and looks kind of bull-like in some ways.
Yeah, it's got bull horns or devil horns or something like that.
Well, I'm just talking about the shape of the face. Something about it reminds me almost of a bull. Strangely shaped pupils, two sets of horns. I really like it. Now, if you don't like it with the bright yellow in the scanned-in printed copies, I'm sure that you would be absolutely horrified by the bright yellow in the Marvel Unlimited colors.
Yes. I'm sure it would be.
And it also has some straight up magenta in it as well. So you've got bright yellow, bright magenta, and then browns and oranges.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the coloring, but I like everything else about it. So then Mangog makes it clear very quickly he is the foe of all who live. He even attacks Ulick. Ulick's like, "Art thou mad? It was I who freed you." And he's like, "Okay, fine, I won't kill you right away." And so that whole story is going on. And then quickly we abandon it. And we go back to Thor turns into Donald Blake to help take care of Sif. Meanwhile, Loki is like, hey, I can start attacking people on the streets now because Odin said that he's not going to let Thor fight me. But suddenly Loki's like, wait just a second, let me go back to Asgard. I got a suspicion something's going on there. And then he finds that Odin has, after Odin sort of as his last act told them they couldn't fight, and then he decided to go into the Odin sleep. So this was a big factor in the first MCU Thor movie where Anthony Hopkins went into the Odin sleep, and I thought they had made it up for that movie because I had not read this issue at the time. I was working my way through Thor at the time, and then I ended up getting to this issue shortly after I saw that movie, and I'm like, oh, okay, the Odin sleep is a thing. And of course Odin has a fantastic, great Viking ship boat shaped bed, because this is Asgard is just the equivalent of a 10-year-old boy's room in his race car shaped bed, or a 5-year-old boy's room. And so then Loki's like, hey, that means I get to sit on the throne. What you gonna do about it? Odin's asleep. Know you all that Loki now doth rule. Asgard at last is mine. We then see Thor getting into a fight with a bunch of thugs who are mugging somebody, and just so much going on in this issue. And then suddenly they're like, okay, we've dealt with that for a couple of pages. Now, what's the most important thing to happen in all of these plot threads going on? Well, obviously, the next thing that needs to happen is Thor calls out a bunch of hippies. And he is, he says, I am looking for Loki. Says, now I must resume my search for Loki. Yet my mind doth wander. Why hath Imperial Odin been so strangely silent? If something be amiss in Asgard, alas, no choice have I but to await my summons. No, Thor, you could go to Asgard and check. But he's like, okay. So then he walks up to 3 hippies and he says, hast thou seen Loki? Him whose very visage be evil incarnate? And it's like, what on earth made you think they would know anything about Loki, Thor? Why 3 hippie dropouts would be able to tell you anything about Loki that, say, Odin himself would not be able to tell you? Says, and then they respond, what's the bit, man? How uptight can you be? Look, we don't groove your kind of scene. Like if some cat's bugging the establishment, that ain't our hang-up. Tell it to the squares, Dad. We dropped out. I dig the hair and the guru getup, but that hammer's from nowhere, man. He says, thou deign to scoff at enchanted Mjolnir. And then he gets them to try to pick up Mjolnir, which of course they can't do because they're not worthy, because they're just a bunch of hippies. And then he gives them a whole speech about dropping out and saying, 'tis not by dropping out, but by plunging into the maelstrom of life itself that thou shalt find thy wisdom. There be causes to espouse, there be battles to be won, there be glory and grandeur all about thee, if thou wilt but see. So he gives them a whole speech about how it's wrong to tune in, turn on, and drop out. And then, meanwhile, we cut back to Balder and Carnilla. Instead of picking up on any of the many plot threads we've had going in this issue, he finds out that she has frozen a bunch of, frozen for all eternity, a bunch of warriors that had been sent out to find her. Balder realizes this is the missing Legion of the Lost, and he decides to go ahead and fight her again. Meanwhile, Mangog finally makes it to the surface with Ulik in tow, and that is the end of the issue. Truly all over the map. Wild issue. The hippies just make it, in an issue full of crazy things, the hippies are by far the craziest. What did you think of this crazy issue, Steve?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Coletta's inking, as you were saying, had been getting better for a while. I think that it's sort of slacked off a little bit here in this case. It looks a little bit rough.
Yeah, too many books this month.
I think he's putting all his energy into inking Colon these days.
Yeah.
But it is just sort of all over the map. Why does Hela show up just to be like, oh no, I'm just wanting to show you, you know what? Valhalla's really cool, man. So what do you say? It's like, what?
Well, plus, does she run Valhalla or does she run Hell? I thought that Hell and Valhalla were different places, but okay.
You know what? That's a very good point. I don't know. I love the bit with the hippies. Well, one of the things I like is that Thor, even though he's lecturing the hippies on their lifestyle choice, he does say at one point, though thou be truly pure of heart, in thine innocence thou art fair misguided. So I find it interesting that they still are saying, oh yeah, no, the hippies' hearts are in the right place. They're just not going about these things in a way that's going to be helpful.
Yeah.
lots of plot threads to be juggling at one time in this issue. But I like the design of Mangog. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. Other than that, we have about half a dozen other subplots that are going on, and we'll see how they handle those.
Yeah, I'm just checking my notes. I say, where is Loki? Let me ask these 3 hippy-dippy weathermen. They seem like experts on the topic.
Yes.
It says Mangog will bring Ragnarok. Now, we've already had a whole flash forward to Ragnarok in the Tales of Asgard feature. I don't remember Mangog being part of that. I'm not sure if Mangog is part of the Ragnarok myths in the original Norse legends, but I'm glad we're going to get a Ragnarok storyline because those are always good Thor storylines. And yeah, I just end by saying, Coletta getting scratchier again.
Yeah. And, at one point when Thor turned into Dr. Blake at Sif's bedside, a nurse happens to walk into the room right after he's turned into Dr. Blake. And she says, "Oh, doctor, I didn't know you were here. I've been on duty right outside all night. I could have sworn no one entered this room." And he's like, "But obviously it would seem that you're mistaken." "Yes, sir, I suppose I am."
Yes.
It's just, I don't know. It seems like, oh, you don't have to gaslight her like that, especially since when it becomes clear that you're in love with the patient a little bit later, she's like, "I'm going to go check on something." Mm-hmm. She's all there for it, man. You don't need to gaslight her.
Yep.
Anyway, all right. So, shall we go ahead and finish up this month with the X-Men?
Yes, let's do it.
Yes, well, not this month, but finish up this episode. So, the X-Men featuring the end of the X-Men. And as they've been doing lately, the end of the X-Men is much larger on the title than the X-Men is. We see on the cover the Juggernaut, who is ripping apart an X that contains pictures of the 5 X-Men, and they're all looking distraught in their images. Mm-hmm. Edited by Stan Lee, written by Gary Friedrich, laid out by Don Heck, penciled by Werner Roth, inked by John Tartaglione, lettered by Artie Simek. So the same triple art team that we've had lately, giving us more or less the same results. Yeah. Probably looks a little bit better than the last couple of issues, I think, but not by much. So we begin with the X-Men all standing around Professor Xavier's tombstone. They've already had the funeral, so I don't know necessarily why they're hanging out at the tombstone all together as though it were the memorial service or something like that.
Yeah, they're all acting like he just died. They're all weeping by the tombstone as if this is the first time they've seen it. They then have the reading of the will. They're sort of forgetting that he died like 4 issues ago.
Yeah. So, and of course, Foggy Nelson is the probate lawyer. That's
of course.
His term, right? Probate, yeah,
something like that.
So, and comes to read the will. The FBI agent who had a relationship with Professor X shows up right before the reading of the will, and they're like, okay, buddy, we need to talk to you later because we've got a will to read. So they listen to the reading.
FBI agent who has had his name changed. He used to be Fred Duncan, and now he's Amos Duncan. They, of course, have to just explain this in the Marvel indexes as like his name, Fred Duncan, little heard first name Amos used in this issue. It was like Amos Fred Duncan, little used name Amos used in this issue.
Right, kind of like Robert Bruce Banner.
Yes, or Joe Robert Robertson.
Yes.
Stanley or whoever, Gary Friedrich gets confused as to the names, and then they have to explain it away later.
Yes. So, although Amos is such a weird name to just sort of throw in there, it's like,
yes.
Anyway, strange. After the will is read, they then go back to talk to the FBI agent. But before we can really get into that conversation, we see the Juggernaut floating around in the Crimson Cosmos, and then there's some kind of a energy thing that happens, and he shows up in our world again, surrounded by machinery. He immediately is like, well, this machinery must be what brought me back, so I'm going to wreck it so they can't send me back. It turns out this is in the X-Men's basement, so the X-Men get suited up and head down in the basement to see what's going on, and the Juggernaut is saying, hey, I'm here to get revenge on my stepbrother, Professor X, and they're like, yeah, dude, Professor X is dead. He's like, no, you're lying to me. You can't steal from me my vengeance. But it seems that supposedly Professor X had built this machine to bring the Juggernaut back from the Crimson Cosmos, and it was still running when he died. Spoiler alert, by the end of the issue, it then automatically sends him back to the Crimson Cosmos again for some reason, even though the machine was destroyed by the Juggernaut. It doesn't make that much sense. So we end up getting a big long fight between the X-Men and the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut at one point seemingly murders the FBI agent, it would seem. Page 10. Yes. I mean, how is that guy not dead? Juggernaut lifts him up and slams his head into the ceiling and then throws his body out the window. But as it turns out, he's just fine. As he says in a few minutes, nothing a little liniment won't handle.
Yes.
So, anyway, the Juggernaut eventually sees that, yes, there's the tombstone. So that means that it must indeed be true that he is dead. And then at that point, he ends up getting taken back to the Crimson Cosmos somehow.
Well, first you have the X-Men are attacking him, and he suddenly develops a brand new power that's never seen before and never seen again, where he's shooting out globules of energy. What the? Globules of sheer energy flying at us from him. Try to take cover. There's no telling how powerful those things might be. It's very strange.
Yeah, and when Bobby says globules of sheer energy flying at us from him, Beast says, a brilliant deduction, Bobby. It's like, really? Is that a brilliant deduction? To say globules of pure energy? That doesn't seem like much of a brilliant deduction of any sort at all. Anyway, once the Juggernaut mysteriously then disappears once again, the FBI agent then says the reason he's come here is that he is going to tell the X-Men that they need to split up because, well, there seems to be two different reasons. One is that it's too dangerous for them to all be together because they could be taken out in one fell swoop, but then also that they could be better fight evil mutants if they were spread out across the country or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not 100% clear. And the X-Men are like, but this is unconstitutional. You can't tell us where we go and who we associate with. And but Scott's like, yeah, but he's got a point. It's like, does he though?
Yeah.
So then they all go and split up. Next, the macabre menace of the man called Mahayogi.
Yes.
So we're going to talk in a little bit about the backup feature in here, but meanwhile, what say you?
Yeah. I say that Thomas is the poor man's Stan Lee and Friedrich is the poor man's Thomas. That this is clearly a third tier book and sort of shows it. I've never been impressed with Friedrich's writing. I point out that it wouldn't be until the movie Frozen comes out 50 years later that anyone would really figure out how to make Ice Blast look cool. Like in Frozen, the Ice Blast looks so cool. Like, oh my God, that's so menacing and cool and awesome to shoot ice out of your hands like that. They never really, just like, I feel like it wouldn't be until the movie Akira came out that they would really learn how to make telekinesis look cool, which this book suffers from. They also wouldn't figure out for even longer how to make Ice Blast look cool until the movie Frozen came out, which this is a problem with this book. And indeed, the Ice Blasts just don't look cool. When Amos Duncan first shows up on page 2, he looks like he's the Jolly Green Giant or something, just because his feet in the foreground are so foreshortened. It's the 50 feet tall FBI agent.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yes, Amos Duncan is an extremely patient FBI agent because he shows up and like, I've got something very important to tell you. They're like, okay, well, you just wait there then while we go listen to the reading of the will. And then he comes back. It's like, now can I tell you the very important thing? They're like, nope, sorry, Juggernaut's back. We're going to go fight him. Just wait there even longer. And Amos Duncan is like, okay. And then it's after they defeat Juggernaut, he's like, now can I tell you the very important thing? You have to break up. And they're like, oh, okay.
He's like the taxi customer in Airplane.
Yes, exactly. At one point, someone is throwing somebody else, and they're like, yeah, throw me like Bob Gibson. And I always used to get, where is this? Yes, grab this king-size baseball and make like Bob Gibson, trying to get Beast to throw a giant ice ball at Juggernaut. And I always used to get Bob Gibson and Josh Gibson mixed up. And I thought like, wow, this guy played for a really long time. But Josh Gibson, I think, was a big Negro League player. And Bob Gibson was a big Major League player in the 60s and 70s. and I always used to get them confused. And then I say at the end, globules of sheer energy never seen before or again, I assume, ? But anyway, those were my thoughts about this issue.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to. It's just a couple of months before Steranko ends up showing up and making a brief appearance with the X-Men, right?
Yep.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Very much so.
Let's get some value out of this book. Yeah, this book was so delightful for the first, maybe from issue 3 or so up through until Kirby left. And it's just lost all of its charm.
Yep.
Even though we've gotten better uniforms for everyone except Angel, the charm that it had is long gone.
Yes. Well, that's what's otherwise known as Heck Roth Tartaglione. And Friedrich, for that matter.
And Friedrich.
Friedrich Heck Roth Tartaglione.
Yes,
I'm not going to blame Artie Simek.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the backup feature real quick. The Origins, the Uncanny X-Men, and then there were 2. So when last we left, edited by Stan Lee, script by Gary Friedrich, penciled by George Tuska, inked by John Tartaglione, lettered by Artie Simek.
So unfortunately, for the last several issues, this backup was the only Marvel book inked by Jean Verpoorten, who was a head office guy at Marvel. And I really liked his inking. This issue, unfortunately, we switched to Tartaglione inks, but still, with the Tuska pencils, this is a much better looking book than the first half of the book.
So when last we left off, the 2 young mutants, Cyclops and Iceman, were about to be lynched by an angry mob who dislikes mutants. And I remember in the previous issue, you were a little bit unsure at one point about whether one of the people who wanted to kill them was the sheriff who had maybe had a change of heart and was going to just join the lynch mob. But no, here he makes it very clear that no one's going to be committing any extrajudicial murders on his watch. Well, they take him off the watch. The mob goes and drags the sheriff away and lassos the 2 X-Men, which is a little bit weird, but ties them up with rope around the chest. And then they actually have an actual noose, and they're throwing it around the branch of a tree. But we see then that Professor X is driving like a bat out of hell from the X Mansion out to this suburb, wherever it is, this other suburb. This is in Connecticut, right?
I forget.
Anyway, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Somewhere on Long Island, who knows? Anyway, Professor X is like, hey, I'm on my way. You've got to break free and head to Drake's home. So, Scott's like, okay, sure, we'll go ahead and do that. They break free. They run away from the mob. And they end up at Bobby Drake's home where Professor X is. And Professor X is like, oh, meanwhile, I've gone ahead and wiped the memories of the whole lynch mob. And I've wiped Bobby's parents' memories of the fact that he's a mutant. And now he's going to come and join us at school. So a lot more lobotomizing from Professor X once again, which always gives me the creeps. But, I guess better than having a lynch mob lynch you. I guess. Yes. Anyway, next, a special feature giving you the inside info on Iceman's powers. So that is it for this backup feature. I've generally enjoyed this Iceman origin backup feature, although I find this conclusion of it a little bit of an anticlimax. I don't know about you.
Sure, but I generally like it. I think this has been a good sort of, 4-parter here we've had of Bobby Drake's origin. And I find this to be a satisfying enough conclusion to it.
Yeah, I guess it's just the sort of, Professor X shows up, lobotomizes everybody, and then everything's okay kind of ending. I find a little tired and a little upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there we are. Those are the first 5 issues of this long month of Marvel Comics. So I don't really have any final thoughts on this. Do you?
I found that these were shockingly enjoyable books. A very silly idea for Spider-Man to do a Medusa story, but I found it to be very entertaining. Very bizarre idea to give Medusa her own book, but I also found that to be entertaining. And even though the character was completely inconsistent with the Spider-Man book we had just read, I thought that the Thor was very entertaining. Well, of course, I forgot to mention with Thor, the thing that kept coming to my head was from the Tick Mad Scientist episode, where it says, at one point the mad scientists have invented something that turns you into patchouli, and they've invented these other things. And they're like, patchouli, world peace. You're not mad scientists. You're a bunch of hippies. And so as I was reading the Thor, I kept the phrase that kept going to my mind is, you're not mad scientists. You're a bunch of hippies. You're not experts on Loki. You're a bunch of hippies. But anyway, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. And then what's the book I'm forgetting to mention here? What was
Daredevil.
the other one we read? Daredevil. Oh, well, Daredevil, shockingly, I won't even say shockingly good art, shockingly interesting art on Daredevil. So I was glad I read that issue too. So I'm glad we read these 5 issues, and we've got some great issues coming up.
Yep. All right. Well, let's go ahead and call it for today, and then we will come back to you in a week.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care and stay safe out there.
Yep. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.